Okay. Yeah, so we're here. It's recording. Yay!
Yay!
Okay, so if you're watching this, you're not aware, maybe. I don't know. Maybe you were hanging out on Facebook and saw that we appeared, then we didn't appear, then we appeared again, and then we didn't appear. And yeah, so this is the sixth time that we've tried to do this damn video that we promised people in response to the new TV series, right? So the new season.
Yes, it's the next season of Outlander, and it's been a lesson in patience. Well, of course, you need to know the Mercury retrograde did start this past
Oh,
weekend.
well, that explains it.
Explains everything.
Oh my gosh. Why didn't you tell me that yesterday? I would have just said, fuck
It
this.
just today.
Even try anymore. Sorry, I probably shouldn't have said that.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, you can't say we're not dedicated, right? 6 times.
We really
Now
want
we're
to
here.
tell you our opinion
Fingers
so
crossed.
badly.
Yes, of course. We know everyone is waiting with bated breath.
Oh my God.
Okay. So I'm going to, now that I'm not recording on my phone again, and I've got I've got the timer here. So what we normally do is we kind of give ourselves about 15 minutes to talk about the new episode and kind of what we liked, what we didn't like, responses, that kind of stuff. So yeah, you ready?
Yes, I'm ready to go.
Okay, cool. All right, so it's running.
All right.
So
Just like the last 6 times. What do you think, Jayme?
because anything we say today is going to be a surprise, right?
It's
What did I
rehearsed.
think? So other things I have said in previous iterations of this conversation that didn't take were that I liked it, but I still kind of struggle with I think I'm watching it for analysis rather than losing myself in it like I used to. I noticed
Yeah.
that last season, and I noticed I was doing it this season, well, with this episode too.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's indicative of the show or of me or perhaps both. So there's that. I'm just sitting there picking it apart. There are little bits and pieces that I really liked. Other parts that kind of wouldn't say annoyed me, but just felt like lost opportunities. So we can kind of talk
Yeah.
about those as we go along.
Right.
Yeah. So general impression, yeah, okay, cool. We'll see where this goes. But I wasn't blown away, but I didn't hate it. So
Right. I think I sort of agree with you there. There were a lot of opportunities that I was sorry we missed. There were a lot of things I liked about it.
yeah.
One of the hardest things that I'm discovering is that people like there's one woman that I work with who loves Outlander, and she's so upset that they're not going to go back to Scotland. She hasn't read the books,
Oh,
and she's like, I just want them to go back to Scotland. And I'm like, well, so they will, but just not this
eventually,
season.
like, yeah, was it
Eventually,
book
they'll go back
6 or 7?
briefly.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it
7.
won't be that anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of the newness, the blushes off the rose, so to speak, of, Jayme and Claire are solid.
Yeah.
Jayme and Claire are not going to separate from here on out
Yeah.
purposefully for any reason.
Yeah.
We're
Now it's just threats to life as opposed
right.
to time necessarily.
Yeah. Or as opposed to, somebody is coming along and there's another. So there's not really another real rush of romance, and that's part of what the books kind of help take care of. While there isn't really a rush of romance anymore, there's always romantic intent between the couples, and you get that prolonged sense of the word I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, of stability that's still beautiful and that's still intriguing and interesting. It's kind of hard to depict that in a television show.
Yeah.
It really is. And so if you're starting to feel a little on the television show, I do recommend at least reading the books, because Sam Heughan has already come out and said that season 6 isn't going to happen for a long time, that they need a long break.
Oh wow! See, I wasn't aware of that. Yeah, I'm much less connected to fandom than I used to be, just because I'm just so damn busy. But
and so I'm a little concerned that it won't go past season 6. you know, and some of their writing issues of, you know, last year or last season, I felt a little lost on the Jayme and Claire. The connection wasn't there anymore, and I know that they were trying to bring Roger and Bree into the picture and help us to hook into that relationship, and so you can't really show but so much over 12 or 13 episodes, and so and they've got that challenge again this year.
Which they
so
I think they tried to do then with the wedding happening in this particular episode, and kind of Roger and Bree, and then Jayme and Claire, and then Myrta and Jocasta. So we're gonna dilute that romantic water even more with a third couple. And
I like that trio. I like the trio together. I mean, what I missed was, and here are some of the things we've missed, because Jayme and I both love the books so much. While I hate The Longest Day.
This is the day that never ends.
Exactly. While I miss The Longest Day, don't miss The Longest Day, I do miss the richness that it provided by having it at the gathering. So you mentioned yesterday in the podcast, in our conversation that did not get recorded properly,
because we got video but not audio, so we have to
no audio.
Anyway,
you mentioned yesterday about that people would not show up.
So John Gray being at somebody's wedding, held up at the ridge. That just seemed
Governor Tryon,
several weeks probably worth of a trip from Virginia.
And Governor Tryon would not have come from the capital in North Carolina just to do this. Anybody, John Gray, Jocasta would not have made a big long trip. She would have asked the wedding to be at River Run so that she could be there at River Run. Instead, they've made the wedding the central focus of all of this, and nobody knows who the hell Roger and Bree are. Why would they show up?
Why would they have traveled all that way? Oh, they're Jayme's, in-law, brother, son-in-law and daughter, but no, in that time wouldn't have, I don't think.
No. However, a gathering, because the Scottish culture was so very strong, and there were so many Scots who had survived Culloden and survived prison, who had been starved to death by starved by the English in North Carolina. Then I think that in the book they get together for the gathering, which is an echo back to the first book and the first gathering at Castle Leoch that we see. And to have hundreds and hundreds of clansmen there wearing their tartans and gathering around talking about regulators and things like that, that is something that Governor Tryon would come to. And that is something that all the clans would gather for if they knew it was another gathering. And in the book,
that's why they had the wedding at the gathering, was because people would be there, not
including a priest.
Wedding.
Including a priest, which a priest or a preacher would not have come for this. And this is still the frontier in the 18th century, and priests and preachers are very rare in the frontier. So to have somebody like that at the wedding, it just, that's why hand fasting was there, because you couldn't get a minister in time. So that was kind of a piece that was missing. Also, what was missing was Frank. They mentioned him briefly, and I was sad that he was not there to add the extra conflict for Claire and for Brianna, actually. She grew up with this.
He's kind of haunting that day, that day that never ends. He is present in spirit for both Claire and Bree, and there's just kind of mention, I wish he could be here, kind of thing. But that was it. And
she has conversations with him in her mind. She wakes up after a sex dream with Frank, and you're like, oh no, that can't possibly be. She has the king of men. Why would she do that? But she had a real relationship with her husband in the book. So that's kind of something that was missing for me.
So one thing I have thought about since since our conversation yesterday is, one thing I did love was the emphasis they placed on Jayme before he goes to do kind of the calling, calling people forward, and how he
Right.
dresses in his tartan, and
That was
like,
lovely.
as the layered kind of thing again. That was lovely to see.
And
Um,
that was really, that's very strong in the book,
yeah,
actually. Yeah, he does put on the show
yeah,
and the flourish every time he has to go do something like this. He knows politically what that means.
yeah. But also from us, something else I didn't say, but we kind of mentioned, so one of the reasons why the wedding was supposed to be at the gathering was because of both the priest and the Presbyterian minister were going to be there, the Catholic priest and the Presbyterian minister. And while I loved that they included the whole all Presbyterians have hair ticks, which I thought was hilarious, when I read it and when it's in the TV show. But Jayme being really kind of upset that he's a Protestant, and
Yeah.
I know there's only so much time, but and because I'm a religion nerd, and I would have liked to have seen that a little bit more, kind of.
Yep. Well, and
Even in
that's
the shaving scene, like he could have just said, like, well,
yeah.
you are a Presbyterian, or something.
You sure you don't want to get baptized?
Exactly. You sure you won't convert for my daughter? Yeah, that would have been fun.
That's one of the things, again, that the book really kind of explores, is not just the fact that you've got it written in a history book somewhere that people start to meld in their traditions, and they start understanding and appreciating others' traditions because they don't have any other neighbors. So your neighbors are Lutheran and you're Catholic. You still need to rely on them, and you start seeing people beyond beyond your differences. You start seeing the commonalities, and you start appreciating people's different traditions and their different faiths. And while we can read that in a book somewhere, that the actual people loving each other and getting to know each other and making changes with each other. Back in Scotland, it was Catholic and Protestant against each other.
Yeah.
But when Jayme comes to America, his daughter marries a Protestant.
Yeah.
Well, shift.
He starts to address that while he's in Artsmuir by starting with the Masons as a way to draw people together rather than sectarian divide instead. So
absolutely.
Yeah. So even though he's open to the idea, there's still about marrying non-Catholic. The credits, we talked a little bit about that yesterday too. I love the credits. I love the music for the opening credits. This is, I think, my favorite of the seasons so far.
I loved it. I wasn't as much on the country twangy thing from last year.
Yeah, the bluegrass kind of.
Yeah, it wasn't my favorite. I'm not really that into that kind of music. But this one
was my second favorite. But yeah.
yeah. I know you love it. There are a lot of people who did love it very much, and I really loved her single voice. I found that
with the title cards. Yeah.
So beautiful. I loved how that was done because it was an echo. It was an echo back to the first season with Claire and how it all begins. And I felt like this was another beginning. Yeah.
Which I also I made a note to myself. So Claire's voiceover at the very beginning of the episode, I'm trying to remember. I know we got that a lot in season 1, but it sort of jarred me. I was like, oh, we're back to that again, where Claire is doing voiceovers. So if there is that kind of echo to the first season, then maybe that felt appropriate. I didn't really think about that and those connections at the time. So
I like that too. But she does still. It's still. Let me talk, Terry. Just please talk. She's still in the book, does narrate her own scenes. Obviously we get third person point of view now, ever since the third book, or the second book actually. But the first book is all written in first person, and it's lovely to see that we still get some of her interior life. I'm glad to see that. I think that with this particular season, where she starts exploring her ability as a doctor, taking residence, is going to be interesting as far as her vocation is concerned. And I would like to hear some reflection on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. I'm
Yeah.
sure we're going to get We Beasties because there's already been a little bit of a reference.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
yeah, that's going to be cool.
That's a good scene.
Yeah. Let's
Yeah.
hope.
Speaking of which, speaking of wee beasties and scenes, the sex scenes were particularly lovely in this one. I'm just gonna say it.
Well, yeah, I think they were. I found myself, okay, so my notes say everyone's getting it on at the Ridge except for Lord Chuck.
And I felt bad because he's so cute.
He's so cute. He's just sitting there by the fire with drunk Myers. Yeah. Which,
yeah, it was very sad. Yeah, well, yeah. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, I was very sad for poor John Gray, but I thought they did that really well. I mean, we got the whole intensity of Jayme and Claire again.
Yeah.
We got the sweetness of Myrta and Jocasta, and kind of the bittersweetness that's going on there. And then you get Roger and Bree, and that's really addressed in the book too. And I was glad to see that they touched on that and really ended with that, because it was like duck duck goose.
Yeah.
It was a real, things are magic in threes, and that was a nice triad of intimacy that I really loved.
Yeah. Talking about kind of intimate scenes, one thing that you mentioned yesterday as well was wishing that Roger had publicly done the blood oath with Jimmy rather than with only Bree, showing. But particularly, I mean, I love when he tells Jocasta off and tells her to shove up her hole.
It's great,
and and I love that they captured her delight basically at that. But yeah, I think just in the context of that having happened, it just would make more sense, I think, if it had been a public thing.
I think written, it would have looked much better if he had done it. So he does that the moment he comes back.
Yeah.
The moment he comes back to Bree, he does this, and he does this in front of Jayme, in front of everybody. And if they had made that almost the culmination of this episode, with Jocasta challenging him on this and him doing this in front of her and everybody else, that would have been really powerful, because that's a blood oath, which is a pretty big deal. And then nobody would have questioned whether or not he was going to hang out for his son.
Well, and then also too, so I'm just thinking about this. So there's that little interaction between Claire and Jayme in this episode about Jayme going, well, is he really committed? He took too long to come back, that kind of thing. And Claire's like, well, yeah, he came back. But yeah, so that would have also kind of resolved that conflict that Jamie's having about, is Roger really committed to my daughter and to her family?
Right. So, I mean, if they had made this entire episode about oaths, because you've got the oaths about the wedding, and really just kind of built up the oaths until you get to the fiery cross and the oath that they have to take to him, that would have been much richer culmination, because their oaths throughout this entire episode, it's just that they're kind of, they don't tend to build on each other. And I mean, now that I'm thinking about this in a writing way, it would have been really beautiful to start with the wedding oath, to move on to, the Claire and Jamie's rekindling of their oath, to move forward with oaths to Tryon, and then ultimately to Jayme, because they're not really saying an oath to the redcoats. They really are saying an oath to Jayme, their new laird. That would have been a stronger culmination.
Yeah, I think so too, actually.
Speaking of the burning cross.
That's a lost opportunity. They
a real lost
really
opportunity.
Should have done something about that, because we said that yesterday too, that Claire and Bree both would have understood the significance of that in the 20th century, and to be in this context of time travel would be a need to sort of explain.
And Diana Gabaldon,
what that is and what that means for other people now, and Yeah.
Diana Gabaldon does explain it in the book, and she does it really well,
Mm-hmm.
to say, burning crosses in the South in the United States in the 1950s and 60s and before have a special connotation, but they had to have come from somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And more than likely, they came from this particular ritual.
Yeah.
So it would have been a much richer conversation to have, but instead of saying something, to stand on it, because you have to have it. It's called the fiery cross.
Yeah.
They chose not to say anything at all, and to me that's almost worse. I think I would want to know from our African American listeners and other people of color, how they felt about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I need to look and see if Blacklanders have said anything about it, because I would be really curious how how they feel, especially how strong last season was around racial justice and around rights and that kind of stuff. And I was so proud of them for making those choices, which weren't necessarily in the book. And for them to have just kind of overlooked this one seemed really short-sighted.
Right. I agree.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll get to it when they light the second cross. Who knows?
Maybe. Yeah.
Maybe.
Or maybe it'll get talked about in the next episode. Dad, actually, you're gonna see Bree. But yeah, I'm thinking about Bree and Claire going, why do we have this big cross in the middle of our yard?
You're gonna do what with it? You're gonna burn it? We don't do that. We don't have enslaved people. I don't own people. Sorry, but we don't do that. And it was well done last year, but this time it was just missed.
Yeah. I've got two other things actually. So we didn't say anything last time. Roger, when we go back.
I know. So I wrote that down and I forgot to say it yesterday.
I did too. I wrote that down too. I was like, oh yeah, because in the book he does kind of have this. We're only here for a little bit. We're gonna return.
Yeah, and I mean that's a really rich conflict right there. Yeah. Her face after he said that was wonderful. Oh God, he thinks we're going back.
Yeah, and he hasn't realized that Jayme might not be able to travel, and
he's not bought in to where he is now. He's thinking ahead, he's thinking behind, and he's not thinking now. And that's a dangerous place for a relationship to be. So that's great conflict. I'm glad they brought that in.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. And then the other thing is Duncan Ennis.
What? We thought Myrto was gonna, beat Duncan Ennis, and everybody kept saying no. And now I'm like, we've never met Duncan Ennis before this moment, and now he's gonna marry Jocasta.
So my question, Myrto is saying, oh, we knew him on Ardsmuir, that kind of stuff. And I was like, how could he have come to the States? Oh, well, not the States yet. Come to this new place and made himself such a person of consequence that he has the temerity to ask Jocasta to marry him.
He has no left arm.
The man.
he's down an arm.
Well, we don't know. He didn't say he was an armless guy.
Well, no, he is in the book. He's down an arm in the book.
In the book. But in the book, he's also kind of Jayme's right-hand man, and so it makes sense.
And he's also a little scrawny thing who went to prison and doesn't have a bit of land to his name. I think Jayme gives him some land. But that's nothing like
a consequence in the book, but because his relationship to Jayme and because he's a safe bet and because Jocasta is getting it on elsewhere, he's kind of a pawn in the book.
Doesn't Jocasta kind of set this up that she'll marry him because she needs a man to attend meetings with her,
so that she her estate for her.
Yeah, so that she can basically use him as a puppet. Yeah.
So now he's going to be a very different character if he is taking the initiative on his own, not connected to Jayme. So I'm kind of like, Why didn't you just say Gerald Forbes? Why didn't you just say, like, why did you choose Duncan Ennis as the
or
name?
one of the other folks who were in the redcoats. I mean, there were several other opportunities. There was the judge. There were
Exactly. I mean, are we going to see Wiley? Just all of that. I have no idea. But it was kind of like, what?
Speaking of what?
Yeah.
Who put Spanish moss in a tree in the mountains of North Carolina?
Somebody who
Hey
doesn't have a clue. They just think
hello,
the American
you.
South, everything is
You
savannah.
folks over in Sony who are from California,
Oh
who
my
are
God.
trying to put together North Carolina in Scotland. There is no Spanish moss in the mountains of North Carolina. And the reason is because it's too cold. It's colder in the mountains of North Carolina than it is in Richmond, Virginia, and it won't
There's
grow
no Spanish moss
here.
in Richmond because it's too
Nope.
cold.
It's too cold.
It's not humid enough, and it's too cold in the winter.
So low country South Carolina and northern Georgia and that area, yes, of course, Spanish moss, but not in the mountains.
Is where
Swamplands,
Spanish moss grows.
Savannah. They would see it in Savannah, maybe in Charleston,
Louisiana, but
not in the house, the big house.
The house is too big. The house is way too big.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I mean, I knew it was supposed to be bigger than all the other settlers that are around Fraser's Ridge, but
half that size is the big house.
Still half that size is a big house. Yeah. He's built a mansion. Out of what? Where did he get that beautiful green paint, by the way?
Carolina pine, but it all looked like oak to me. I'm like, Dad, you have got some serious tools to be able to carve wood posts and the
planed extremely carefully.
I was a little surprised at how not rustic it was.
Set design. You said that there's a conversation about that at the end of the episode with the
there was,
which so there was be on our end of here. So
there was a conversation on a couple of things. So we get the little commentary by the producers and sometimes the writer. We've got commentary on that in particular, but also on the fact that they chose not to do the gathering because it was, in their opinion, the day that never ends as well. And they just wanted to get rid of that and make it clean. I think they lost something with that. But as far as the big house, they said that they had commissioned the big house to be built by the construction crew, by the carpenters that were there on set. And they didn't quite realize it was that big. They showed up and they arrived and like, ooh, this is really big. And then they decided that they weren't going to do anything about it. They went ahead and just kept it big, which I found to be interesting. I mean, it would have taken a lot of time for them to tear it down. And, if they had wanted to know how big it was, they probably could have just looked at the plans. But I think they were surprised at the actual size of it. But they've kept it, and they think it's beautiful. And it is. It's stunningly beautiful. I just don't think it's...
Do you think they're actually filming in it, or they're filming in the studio for the interior shots? And so
that's more than likely what they're doing. Usually you build the exterior of the house, and so that you can, and the interior is really just for the sound crew and some other crew and stuff like that. And then they have sound stages elsewhere because it's much better to work on a sound stage than it is to work in a drafty, echoey old house that you've just built. So they've got stages that they've set up where they can have lighting and you can be inside all the time and not have to worry about weather. So more than likely those are, whenever you see the interior of the house, those are sound stages. And whenever you see the exterior of the house, that is just a shell of a house.
Yeah. So again, it seems a bit silly that anyway. Oh well. I feel like we've been a little bit negative about things, but
I know, and yesterday we were much more positive.
We were,
but I think
I guess the things we have to harp about still just kind of filter to the top. Yeah.
I still loved getting back into it. I will say that. I loved seeing Sam and Jayme, seeing Jayme and Clarence on screen again. I love seeing Roger Mack because he's just the cutest thing ever. I can't wait to see Ian and what happens with him. I'm really looking forward to Several things. I'm looking forward to seeing several things in this particular season. And I can't wait till Sunday night.
Yeah. So, yes. Well, cool. Well, next time, yeah, we'll be here hopefully on Monday instead of.
Well, maybe not, because you've got something on Monday. It might be Tuesday.
I do, but it might. Yeah, we'll see how we go. Yeah. Anyway, so we should probably end this because we have gone way over time.
Oh dear.
Yes. Well, that's okay. It's the first one. We'll stick to time a little bit better next. So,
Okay.
have a good day. Bye, everybody. We'll
Bye,
see you
guys.
next week.
See y'all.